the fact that we don't have good, solid information really is reflective of the pathologies of many of Beijing's human rights abuses these days, that one can't rely on a free press, that it's hard to access lawyers, and that people are regularly denied basic protections under the law. But we've also seen in the last couple of years a much more aggressive push by Beijing to force other governments to return people who are refugees from China, people who are allegedly corrupt officials, or to intimidate people beyond the mainland borders. So, these are serious problems.
And China is saying, stay out of our internal matters. Li Bo has a British passport, but they say, first and foremost, he is a Chinese citizen. What does that say to you about the whole one country, two systems theory?
Well, I think Xi Jinping's government's approach to the law is that the law is whatever they say it is whenever they want it to mean this or that. What's written on paper is regularly disregarded. And I think one of the most important aspects of this case is that it really is stoking fears in Hong Kong about encroachments by the Chinese government, which we've seen with respect to press freedom, about public protest there around the Occupy movement, and even around some judicial decisions.
And when you talk about these fears, I mean, there's validity behind these fears, wouldn't you say, even though the mainland laws are not really supposed to apply to Hong Kong?
Sure. There are, a number of realms in which we've seen some steady encroachment. And, the Hong Kong government has not necessarily covered itself in glory in defending its own territory under law. And I think people in Hong Kong have been concerned about everything ranging from media freedom to sort of basic public policy issues about whether their government in Hong Kong is really representing their interests or increasingly doing Beijing's bidding.
And when it comes to this bookstore and some of the titles they were selling, which were not necessarily complimentary to some of China's leadership, talked about wives and girlfriends of leaders and all sorts of other, some would say, salacious matters. How much of a bloody nose does that give to Beijing authorities when they see that happening in a place like Hong Kong?
Well, presumably they dislike it the same way they dislike any kind of criticism, but one of the reasons Hong Kong and its independence, or its relative independence or autonomy, remain critically important is that it has for a long time been the part of China where you could go to get different, independent, credible information, as opposed to in the mainland where it's very difficult to access any materials that aren't censored by the state.